Welcome. This is the November 19th Jail and Zones production user call. We have Carlo, Igor, Dave, Dan, Jan, and myself, Michael, and I am pleased to report that I have prepared 19 Open ZFS User and Developer Summit videos, and hopefully they go live today. And welcome, Igor. It sounds like you have some great jail meta news. You have the floor.
Yeah, so we have the patch ready, the very first version of the patch, and now it's on the Fabricator. So some comments started gathering around that. And currently, the idea is just that the kernel is going to provide some space for anything, for some zero-based string, zero-ended string, and maybe in future on userland side we could ease working with this data, like split onto tags or something like that. For example, it could be split by new lines, and it could be, every single line could be treated like
Let him
keyword
That
finish.
would
thing,
not
for
work
example.
for
Let him
sysctl.
finish. Let him finish. Go ahead.
It's
Hold your
it's just
questions. Go ahead, Igor.
yeah. This is just an idea how it could be extended in future. The patch itself is not talking about this userland usage right now. And this buffer space right now is limited by a global variable. It's also under the discussion how to go with that. Currently, it's just a single global variable controlled from prison zero. It could be increased, it could be decreased. When we decrease it, existing metadata are going to stay as is, even if they are longer than the new limit. And also we have open questions regarding whether users in a jail can read this. The current state of the patch allows to read it by anyone through a sysctl, and I think that we probably will end up with this capability turned off by default, and probably it's going to be controlled with additional parameters to the jail subsystem, like allow read meta, for example, to allow reading it, and probably even allow meta to allow setting this metadata by subjails. Just thinking out loud. I guess I'm going to comment about this on the Fabricator.
You probably want basically one variable, which is or one variable prefix or whatever, basically a namespace which is readable by the jail, and one which isn't, because there's state which may be private to the host of the jail, but there could also be other state which would be useful to expose to the host, maybe a default DNS resolver or whatever, so that you don't have to use DHCP, but you could just give a VNet enabled jail its DNS resolver, and then it could just have an rc.d script or something which picks it up. And we could extend the resolve.conf script to do that if it's in a VNet jail, to look at the well-known meta for this exists.
Sorry, Anna, I didn't quite
Uh,
catch the gist of that.
Let's say you have a VNet enabled jail. It needs a bit of configuration information about its environment. For example, which DNS resolvers to use. In my opinion, this meta field would be a good place to inject that state into the running jail, so that the jail command would set it, and then later within the jail, an rc.d script could pick up the metadata from a sysctl and feed it into resolve.conf to play nice with other mechanisms. Does that make sense? Or
Yep, I just made some notes. And the other thing you mentioned was something about public-private, which I didn't quite
yeah,
follow either.
some things you may want to, I don't know, put in the, let's say, a ZFS dataset encryption key for the jail or something, which some other part of your jail hooks has to pick up again, so that basically you put it in and or some other credential to any kind of API token or whatever for reporting the state of the jail from the host, for example. There's a state which definitely shouldn't be readable by the. I think we lost Igor.
Uh,
Sorry?
no, he's
No.
just muted. He's here. And I do have a
Okay.
follow-up on the privacy
So
when you're done,
there
Jan.
could be state which you want to associate with a jail, which the jail itself should not be able to read, let alone write. But it's not black or white, or so you may want to have some state visible. So you probably need two keys in the sysctl tree.
Yeah, it's. I
But
think we should think about this. How to provide
mhm.
the interface to cover such use cases, but not to make it very complex from the interface perspective and from the implementation perspective, because it's about security. And the less code, the less issues. Yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah.
So the easy way to extend your work would be to have, instead of one, have two and call one private and one shared or something. So that you have shared meta and private meta, which would be just two. But this will still leave the other problem I commented on, which is that a sysctl can only be replaced. It cannot be patched or so. So the problem is that there can only be one writer, and there isn't even a locking protocol to allow you to atomically update that thing. Even if you had a format, let's say something as simple as key equals value new line as your format, you couldn't have multiple commands updating this metadata at the same time because there is no atomic compare and swap. There is no lock on a from user space you can have on a sysctl. So you can't really have a locking protocol unless you use a log file and then have an external locking protocol, which would be really ugly. And
I'd like to keep the discussion very high level, or are we trying to get into implementation today? At the moment, all we're talking about is what we want to do and how we want to present the data to the user. I realize sometimes dictates implementation, but let's not get bogged down in details if I'm understanding what we're doing.
What I would like to expose to the user, what I would like to see as a user is not a single sysctl or two, but just a subtree in the a leaf subtree in the sysctls where basically all the leaves are at one level, so not nested, and just a flat key value space, so that I could create arbitrary name sysctls and put a string in there.
So if I rephrase that, you're suggesting that the tag would actually be exposed as a separate named syscontroller.
As part of the key.
So you'd have like jail.meta.tag1 and jail.meta.tag2, for example.
It wouldn't have to be numbered.
Let him finish, please.
Foo and bar.
Examples that's in the doc there. And that would allow then updating of keys without locking, or would that not solve that problem?
No, it would allow basically multiple pieces of code to work together. So let's say you have one helper command. For example, in the OCI world, you would have a CNI provider for your jail, and it has to associate some metadata with that jail. And you have a CSI, so cloud storage, and a network provider, and each one has to store data to that. unless you now want them to be closely coupled to the runtime, for example, Podman, which invokes them so that they have to update their metadata through yet another protocol to write to the runtime. Instead, if we had the ability to have just a flat key value list, that would be enough so that anyone could say, okay, this namespace is mine, basically anything starting with whatever Podman belongs to Podman, or you could do the stuff which is common with both ZFS user properties or Java packages and put a reverse domain name in there, even the key to basically claim, yeah, my domain : is my namespace, and then but that's not relevant to the kernel. The kernel only has to know there is just a list of key value pairs exposed as the last level in the sysctl, so that each key value pair is one sysctl. Yeah.
I would propose to probably add the comments to the fabricator with probably some examples how it could be used, like some commands or something like that, to get broader discussion. So to better share the idea how it's going to be used, because of general words can be treated different ways because of everybody has their own production needs. So maybe it's better to show just imaginary, even if it's a new command like JText or new sysctls, just naming it how it's going to be and proposing that this is how it could be, and we can all discuss it there on the fabricator.
And the other thing is that it's not the complete answer when I said that you can't have atomic compare and swap for sysctl, because you can register an arbitrary function call to handle the compare and swap, which means if you have a way to split your key into the old and new part, some kind of encoding, then you could implement an atomic compare and swap by abusing the put a value into a sysctl system call, which in the end maps to a function call in your kernel code. And if you do it like that and not directly use the helpers to tie it to a integer or whatever, or a string, and then you can do custom things. I mean, the craziest use case of writing to a sysctl I know is that there's one sysctl you use to create a beehive guest. As in, there is no custom system call. You just write the guest name to a magic sysctl and create the VMM device. Yes, it's ugly. It was probably easy to implement. And it hasn't really hurt anyone because it's a bit confusing to look at, but it works.
Yeah, but
looking at the top of this page, we see the current design is the following. Its value is not inherited from a parent jail. So that tells me that for a given jail, there is a set of values. And we're just talking about key value pairs. And
right now,
this is quite separate to all the things that, say, you set on the host that pertain to that jail, like secure level and stuff like that. Is that what we're talking about?
The way I understood it, it's intended so that runtime support code can store and retrieve metadata associated with the running jail.
Okay, so it's not necessarily configuration items for the jail. It's just data that the jail wishes to store about itself, or that the user wants to store about that jail.
Yeah, so there's a couple of examples further down. So The best model for this is how we store the 2 or 3 ZFS related fields today for jails. So there's a jailed on and off property, and for the data set, and there's also the name. And somewhere inside the jail system, we store this link that says this data set is available in this jail.
Okay.
And you could think of like some other examples here. You might want to have a load balancer that says, I need to make sure that that every jail tagged www is attached to this load balancer pool somehow. And then the system administrator says, I'm going to roll a version of these containers. So I'm going to spin up a v2 www, and the load balancer has enough smarts to go, okay, v2 is better than v1. So I'm going to add a v2 and remove a v1. And then the admin adds another one and another one until now there's 3 new v2 jails and all the older v1s could go. That's just one example. The one that Jan also mentioned earlier is maybe you have some sort of secret that you want to pass in to the jail and you don't want to put in a file. So you can put it in a metadata tag, and then the jail can read that from the inside. So a lot of these things maybe overlap, and you could say, well, okay, I could put that in a file if I wanted. That would provide the function, but the issue you have then is that everybody now has to monitor the file, and when the jail is removed, that metadata doesn't disappear. It's still sitting in the file, and there's no way for an external system now to know that the jail has disappeared, even though the file still remains. So the jail metadata solves sort of two problems here. One is how do I pass things? How do I have a common understanding inside the jail and outside the jail of some sort of value? And the other part is how do I keep track of stuff such that when the jail is destroyed, this metadata then disappears as well.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I got off on the wrong foot. I thought we were talking about metadata in terms of jail.conf. So this is totally separate. Thank you.
Yeah, so the jail.conf thing is a good example. You can't read all of that from inside the jail, which is awfully frustrating. And even after the jail is created, some of the jail.conf stuff is not available to the jail either. So things sort of disappear.
only the parameters are preserved by storing them inside the kernel as sysctl is exposed. But the other variables from your jail.conf, so basically anything, it's a bit imprecise, but basically anything where you have to use a dollar in the assignment is lost as a rule of thumb. Whereas the built-in parameters are basically what you can read back with JLS is preserved, right? But yeah, another example would be what if there is no jail conf on shutdown because it's all auto-generated, and you still have to have something things you need in a teardown handler. And
yeah, you got everything.
there's a problem with I foresee a problem with your assumption that you can just have something monitor the jail metadata, because there is no built-in easy way to get a polling-free notification, some kind of event when a jail state changes, unless you install an out-of-tree kernel module to turn that into devctl messages, and then have the devctl subscriber,
getting down into
almost
details,
always devd,
Save it for the review.
forward that event.
Save it
Yeah,
for the
we're
review.
getting down to the details. The top level question here is how do you get these updates? What would be a mechanism for getting updates?
Yeah, right now we don't have a good one for that. The way you can do it, but it's really
I'll get to the detail, Jan.
abusing the kernel, is to go
Jan,
download another
do this.
kernel module and turn it into netlink messages.
Save it
and
for the
subscribe to
review.
this.
Okay, well, put the question on the review and add the response on the review, please. That's what it's for. Raison d'être.
Can I just ask
Absolutely.
why wouldn't you be able to get events from like KQ and just add a custom uh,
Because there is
analytic
no
filter?
filter right now for that.
Yeah, but you can
It's
add
not
one
a
if you
file
want one.
descriptor, so you can't use the existing default read-write filters. So you would have to have basically right now a custom new filter type to be able to register interest
Yeah,
in the state, and then you would have to implement that as well.
but that seems, I mean, KQ is really extendable in that way. It sounds like a
Of course, it
perfect
is
place to add a
possible, but
filter.
that's hasn't been proposed so far. It Dave has just kind of assumed that this happens, and I was afraid that then ends up with someone polling once a second if that state changed in production. And yeah, it's slow. It burns lots of CPU cycles if you have enough uptime. And at that point, the other part is if you have a proper long-running process supervising the jail, either something like Podman or which runs as a daemon and not just in the foreground, some kind of runtime really, and not just the jail command, then you can say, okay, this gets notified through devd via the devctl jail kernel module about state changes, and then it doesn't just clean up the jail and its mount points and so on, but for example, also the state file with the metadata. And file system change notification exists. The only problem is that subscribers are forced to allocate new file descriptors as new files get added. So you basically adding a new jail could break in a subscriber because it's not a real, the subscription isn't a kernel entity which can be pre-allocated resources, but basically monitor each directory with KQ for new entries to be added to it or for existing ones to change, and then you rescan the directory, and then you have to open each new file, at least as a path descriptor to get the notifications about changes to the files. But that gives you almost instant notification about changes in files, whereas yeah, you have to do some quite unnatural things to get
So
fast
yeah, I
notifications
don't want to
about
interrupt you,
jail
but
state changes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we're not here to solution ad lib to this thing here. We're to briefly present it. It's really good to get this feedback. Like, how do we
And
monitor
it's
events? But
really
we
nice to see
Let him
this
finish,
finally
please,
can't wait.
Jan.
implemented.
We'll have to move to
We
raising
cannot,
hands if
we
necessary.
cannot wait every week for you to solution to these problems bit by bit. It's really frustrating. And I'm sorry to bring out a public recorded call, but your feedback is valuable. It needs to be concise and it needs to be on point. And we're not trying to re-solution this here. We're just saying, here's the thing. Please give us feedback of things we want here. I've got 4 really useful points, but we can't solution them in this call. It's just not effective.
I will write it down.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
In
you.
the
you.
review.
I wish to add something to the list, which is please don't repeat the mistake of ZFS list, which shows absolutely all data sets and pools to an unprivileged user, such that, oh, we see all the usernames, we see perhaps, oh, username slash payroll slash all kinds of things. So it sounds like you did have some notion of making it visible or invisible, and that is appreciated. Great work, Igor and team. Thank you. Anything final to add to that? If not, please put it to the review. That's the whole purpose of it. Carlo, it sounds like you have a new tool for managing Netgraph jails. You have the floor.
Okay. A few weeks ago, I showcased a tool I was creating for myself. I don't really want to go, if nobody is really that interested in me showcasing everything again, I wouldn't want to go into it that much. But I added one more feature that was missing, and I said I was gonna release it in a few weeks. So the time has come, and I wanted to show you the last missing feature that was that's now implemented, and I have a flashy, I don't know, demonstration, let's say,
Ooh,
uh, that's uh, going to release it automatically.
okay.
So
I will
can
stop the
I?
share if you're ready. Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
Let me try. So it's desktop. So, uh, can you see my desktop?
Yes, sir.
So, I showcased these components a few weeks ago. So it was like a thing that spawns jails, bridges, and Ethernet interfaces on the host, and where you can manage them. And in a similar way, you do that in Immunes. And I said I was missing a feature, like something that would compile a Docker-like file to a UniFS layer. So I called it Lamina. I had no inspiration for the name, so feel free to suggest a better one. So I will show you. Oh, wait. Let's see. This is the example I wanted to show you today. And here is, let's see, in layer recipes. I have a few, I call them recipes. So in cgit, it's a tool, I guess you all heard it some time ago. And it's a simple web Git front end. And I have one host in this topology, and its configuration is pretty simple. It has these layers, and it's starting just etc rc. And in the cgit start, I first compile these two layers. It's machine and cgit. So in layers, I have layers machine. Syntax is similar to that of Dockerfile. It just you first specify which layers you are adding to the current truth, and then you can run a few commands. You can use a command like user to switch a user. You can copy files to it, and I think there's one more thing. If it encounters an invalid command or something fails, it will drop you into a shell inside that chroot. So you can do things manually. And then, so me. Here it will start. So sf dot. I don't have this. Sf dot lami. Oh, I don't have to compile it. I can compile it first. Uh, it takes the recipe file, and this is just the path where it will output the layer. So my scripts here for this example will output them to /tmp /lamina dot something. So if I just start cgit this, it will start fetching the bootstrapping the pkg and installing a few packages that I need for my example, and it will start the jail and expose it. So 1 second. So this jail, it has rc.conf is just starting. Second. It root etc rc. It's just starting nginx and the CGI wrap and setting up the network. And in user local etc, I have for cgit, I have configuration, and I have nginx configuration in here. So I think it should be started now. Yeah. So it built the first layer, it built the second layer. So in tmp /lamina, I have those two files, cgit and machine, which are needed for this host. And if you go to this address, It should work, I think. Is it working or not? Oops. Uh, uh, oops. Uh, nope. Yeah, it is working. I don't know what Firefox is. Oh, it's not Seagate. Whoops. My
Defaulting
bad.
to HTTPS.
No, it was Seagate, and I had a
You're pretty
typo in
good.
my domain. Yeah, so here it is, the project, and it released itself, let's say.
Ha.
Here are the examples, and you can see here like all the stuff I just showcased, the configuration and the source code for the. I never used Seagate, so I'm not sure what the UI is, but here is the source code for the SF. So currently, it's missing a few things. Most importantly, documentation, and I plan on doing that uh, as soon as I can. But I'm doing this only on weekends when I have time, so I don't expect much to be done in the next few weeks. And yeah, I'm missing a Beehive module. And after that, I planned on implementing a GUI that's more user-friendly, like Immune's. But I planned on implementing it in a web browser, so like a JavaScript canvas, not Java, HTML canvas, where you can like draw stuff, and then when you press like start, it will just push the configuration to the host and start this sf.base. So yeah, uh,
How were you building the base
that's
jail? That looked pretty thin in a good way.
the base jail.
Well,
So
when it looks like you set up
yeah,
a
yeah,
Cgit jail, correct? And then how's the base
yeah, yeah.
OS handled in that? Is it a
So I
standard FreeBSD
mount.
install?
Yeah, this is just FreeBSD base. I have it
Oh, okay,
extracted in
fine.
this directory,
Okay.
and I have only for building these layers. I also mount this host resolve.conf because the base configuration does not have resolve.conf, so it's gonna fail to install anything inside its root. And I also mount DevFS. And for the Cgit, I just include the previous layer and also add these three packages. But yeah, you can put here anything you want. It can be any directory. I only expect there to be /bin/sh. If you encounter an error, it will drop you into a shell, and
Hmm.
it'll try to start that shell. But yeah.
How are the layers actually built? So obviously DVFS is a mount point over the top.
Yeah.
But what happens when you add a layer? Does it copy the files into an existing file system?
No, it's actually using the UnionFS.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, right.
and using option below, and I found some weirdness with it. So previously I had an option here after you specify the source, you could specify a target that is within the uh, jail, uh, or actually within the layer you're creating, but that had some issues. For example, I had this host resolve.conf, it was like etc directory with only resolve.conf inside. And when I tried mounting it to /etc instead of just slash, it would appear fine, but after I mounted the next layer, it would disappear because the next layer masked the directory inode, I guess, or something, vnode, and you could not get to the mount that was below. But if I have this mount be below at slash, it works fine. So I just removed the option to specify the target directory for layers.
And
But yeah, you
everything has
can.
to be done from the root.
Sorry.
And everything then is done from the root.
Yeah,
Every layer, every directory structure starts off with the
yeah,
root.
yeah. So you can see here in layer recipes, I have host resolve conf, which has etc and then resolve conf. Yeah, it is. I'm not sure if it's a bug inside UnionFS. It wouldn't be the first one, but yeah, I
And
guess it's a compromise.
Dan observed
I
on the
think
tree command, is that strictly the template you're using?
Which
On screen
what do you
right now
mean?
is that you use tree to show a directory. Is that the template for the jail and not the jail itself?
So this thing, Sigit.
Yeah.
So this is just mounted. If I do mount, you will see I have actually that directory mounted as below,
Okay.
as the just being inside that directory. So it's a bit weird to read this because this one is on top actually. So not actually on top. Yeah, actually this the on top is slash tmp slash sf slash sigit underscore host, and below that is this one, and then this one. So they're mounted each one below the next. So it's a bit weird to
Interesting.
visualize.
Yeah.
And so if I change anything in this directory, it will be immediately visible inside that jail. And actually, in this jail, I have Sigit, I have host, conf. I actually have this temporary file system, which is actually the topmost directory. So it's mounted to tmp slash sigit underscore host. And I need to be a root to show it. But it has everything that is changing. So if I go into var, I can have logs persist on the file system after I shut down the topology. Yeah. So it's just UnionFS mounts. And this run, I'll pipe it into JQ. It just has the state configuration and running state of currently running nodes. So it's the configuration of a node, it's, for example, this configuration, and then what the sf.jail wanted to write for its running configuration. It's just a jail ID and a Netgraph interface, Netgraph ID, node ID. Yeah, but yeah, and these modules can be implemented however you want in whichever language. You just have like a I don't know what to call that, an API. You're expected to take arguments via like arguments, program arguments, and return configuration via stdout.
So is it using any OSI templates or
No,
anything?
no,
Okay, as
not
long as
that
they're
I'm
clear.
aware of. If I
Okay.
have accidentally implemented one,
Yeah, no
it
worries.
could be, but yeah.
Cool.
Uh,
Any
so yeah.
questions for Carlo? And so you was this Netgraph related? I guess they are kind of implicit and behind the scenes.
So Netgraph here is ngctl list if I do. It's just going to be, for this example, it's going to be one interface for the jail and one on the host, this sigit underscore net, which are connected. So
Okay.
in that way, it's Netgraph. But what I meant by Netgraph manager or Netgraph topology manager or something, it is only expecting your nodes to expose like Netgraph hooks to the system. So the base system only knows about some opaque nodes, which can be anything. In my example here, it's just a jail and Ethernet interface, but it expects them to give the system back some Netgraph path for some hooks, and the system does links itself. And also, one thing I forgot to mention, I also implemented a way for you to specify like delays and jitter and stuff like that on links. So if you have sf.base, you have link commands, and you can actually use the ng underscore pipe command here. So for set config, you can use let me ng underscore pipe. On the bottom there is a set config. Yeah. So I will just, for example, let's take this downstream. I can SF base is run. So it is called cgit.net link set config link name, and after that it's just this. So it's not that. It is oh, it's not net. It's let me see. Show. It is called. Yeah, I need to format it. I'm. Oh, it's just underscore link. So it created a new pipe which was inserted between the jail interface and the host interface, and it set this configuration to it, so you can tweak stuff like that. And also you can clear the configuration, and it will just remove the pipe and reconnect them together back. Yeah. Yeah, and you can also monitor like how many packets were passed in out via that interface like that and stuff like that. So yeah,
Cool. Any questions? And do you need naming help?
yeah. So the SF actually stands for nothing. Oh, it could stand for. Now that I say it out loud,
Oh, I like
but
that.
it stands for nothing.
Stands for for.
Where is tree command from? Is that something you wrote or another
No,
package?
it's just pkg install 3, I think.
I was
Yeah,
looking
so
for it.
yeah, it's not in base. I I always expect it to be in base, but it's not. Yeah.
Is there a public link to this? Did I miss that?
It is this thing I showcased. So it's actually serving its own source code and
Itself.
examples.
I like
Yeah.
that. Okay.
But I plan on also moving it to GitHub because I think more people are exposed to GitHub and are more likely to interact with it, like leave a bug report or something, then send me a mail about it.
Sure.
But yeah, I,
Very
I
cool.
will add some readmes and stuff like that and documentation.
Sure. Well, any questions regarding that? Thank you for the demo.
Quite a few, mostly around mm, how would it interface with existing German? Are you directly calling into libjail and the libjail system calls, or are you emitting a jailconf and then feed that through the jail command?
So I just directly call jail setv and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I directly call the libjail. I do not omit any
So you don't go through
files.
the command. Okay.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and also for most things, I don't fork exec. I only fork an exec for, I think when I stop the jail, I clean up the directory, which was where the mounts were, and that is removed via rm/r. But I don't think anything else is using exec. Even mounting and unmounting is not using exec.
Any other questions?
Oh yeah, and for unmounting, I actually tried what you suggested, Jan, and that is force unmounting after the jail is destroyed, so there are no processes anymore, and it's working perfectly.
Was
It's
that the
not.
performance issue? You had a real slow tear
It was
down?
after I destroy a jail, it would I would try to unmount its root directory,
Hmm.
and it would just say it's busy, and it would wait for like 3 to 10 seconds, and after that I would be able to unmount. But there were
Mhm.
no processes running with because jail remove finished, so every process was killed with signal 9. Uh,
Um,
so you said
I
it should
tried to
be
understand the code, and I'm not sure if I truly understood what's happening, but it was my impression that what happens is that the jail references the vnode of its root
okay.
directory, and so as long as something references the jail, its root directory it has a non-zero reference count and counts as opened, basically.
Yeah,
That's why it takes until the jail goes away, which is a chicken and egg problem for you.
yeah. But
Because you have to
nothing is
just
actually using that directory, so it's pretty safe to just force unmount that because all the processes are actually killed, and jail is in
it.
the dying state.
Yeah, it is safe because this is not like ripping out a mounted file system. The kernel will still flush it. It's just that it will put all referencing basically files and find them and rewire them to a designated failed file opening so that the only
Yeah,
thing you get is an immediate IO error when you try to use a file descriptor to that mount point. And yeah, it's just redirected to you're always readable, you will always return an IO error so that sane applications wake up and exit
Okay,
if they
yeah,
needed that file descriptor.
cool. So great work. Great work. Um, from the quick news department, it sounds like Jan, you have published your MAC address allocator that I believe is intended to avoid conflicts and birthday problems and all the things. Do you have a quick description of that? Lookup
Yes,
or
one of
allocate
the
hostname MAC addresses. Go ahead.
okay, so I often want to just spin up a jail and want it to, for example, be VNet enabled and don't want to have to put a MAC address in there, but I also don't want to just have only 24 bits of entropy in my whole network, basically for the lower half of the MAC address, as is normally done by ePair. And I don't want it to change if the interface index and so on changes. So I looked at it, tried to do something in shell, discovered that no, that's just write it in C. So I did, and the command works a lot like the get end command, just that if the entry is not yet mapped, it appends it to the file. And while reading, it holds a shared lock, while writing, it holds an exclusive lock. So if it fails to atomically append, it will try to f-truncate back to the original size. If not, it will really noisily die. So and normal files should not have partial writes if open in a blocking manner. So yeah, unless I overlooked something, it should be safe to use concurrently so that you don't need external locking. Yeah,
Is that a candidate for inclusion in base, or it's simply a nifty helper out in the wild?
not on its own, I think.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
It's just that's something which someone should turn into a port, so it's
Okay,
easy to consume. But right now, you just run make and make install, and then it works.
cool.
And yeah,
Um,
and you give it the list of host names as the argument, and then it prints out MAC address host name pairs to standard out. If you ask it via libxo flags, it can also print it as JSON or XML or HTML, but normally you would probably want the ASCII format.
Okay. Dave,
So-
you often have to take off. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so Jan, for your Mac allocator, do you have this plugged into something else? Like, did it solve a need in some high-level tooling?
Not yet. But
Just
you give it the lower and upper bounds of the MAC address range it's allowed to allocate from. And those are not are unique to your hosts, so then you don't need any distributed database. You just have to have non-overlapping allocation ranges between your systems. And if you don't delete old entries because you have 2 to the power of 46 MAC addresses to locally administer, so you don't have to, then you can say that the MAC address is assigned on first startup to the jail, and afterward it belongs to the jail. So if the jail moves to a different host, it takes its MAC address with it, and you don't have to run something like console or etcd in your startup and shutdown procedure.
Via the ethers file?
Yeah.
Via the ethers file between hosts, if I understand you correctly.
No, the ethers files you wouldn't have to synchronize. The information would be duplicated somewhere in the jail.
Where's it kept then? If it's not in ethers, where is that kept?
The ethers file tracks the allocations from the host's range.
Okay.
But the resulting jail would contain a copy of that information of its MAC address. So you keep all the MAC addresses you have allocated in the ethers file, and it does not have to be etc ethers. You can put it anywhere you want. Somewhere under VARDB or works too. And basically, it starts with the assumption that everything is free. Then it scans the file for already used up addresses, puts it in a bit string, assuming that it allocates from the bottom, the bit string will be a good representation. And it fills up the bit string by parsing the plaintext file, and then it picks the first available bit if there is one. Otherwise, you have exhausted your allocation range. If you have like 24 or 32 bits of MAC address range per host, that's plenty and easy to represent as a bit string of demand allocated virtual memory. If you want to go to the full 46 bits, which because there's the bits are interleaved, so it would be 48 bits. You have to allocate address space for, so you need 40 bits of address space, which is a bit excessive, but yeah, sorry.
Cool. No worries. Okay, so thank you for that. Keep us posted. And Dave, you had a question of, well, hey, should kenv data be visible to a jail? And I'm curious if that can be done through,
well, it is already visible. Yeah. That surprised me. Both for two reasons. One of the obvious one is a lot of it simply isn't relevant for jails. So if I go, let me just do this in a jail here to get some actual data. So I'm not going to put all of it in here, but I'm going to put a sample. Where are we here? So here we've got hardware ID, serial numbers, you name it. And there's all the other stuff. There's some of the other things here, like the ZFS data sets that are in use are in here as well. And tunables, current devices, are we running firmware stuff, ACPI revisions? And that seems a bit much. So I wondered what people's thoughts are. There any use cases where you would expect this to be used, or should we just make it by default in general until you enable it?
I can imagine use cases for this information if you have a very privileged jail for some kind of provisioning process. But I also see this as a threat because it makes a perfect target for fingerprinting the host if you run workloads which you don't want to be able to fingerprint you. I don't think there's actually real secrets in there on any sane deployment. But yeah, it's not a. I mean, you don't have to be root to read the kernel environment either. Like it's
no,
not,
that's
dumping
true.
the kernel environment is unprivileged, so it's not a place you would put secrets. But all of these things like hardware serial numbers and so on make it very easy to learn things you may want to hide from your jails.
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of my feeling here. Okay, so I will open a ticket that says maybe we should make this off. I personally don't think it should be readable by non-root users on the host either, but maybe that's a different question. Yeah,
I don't remember. I think there was a Mac module for that, but I don't know if it was ever upstreamed. I remember reading some review with a monetary access control module for kenv reading stuff.
Oh, interesting. And Dan L. Jan made a point that the broot command is also useful in addition to tree. That's in chat. Cool. So Dave, this is definitely part of that broader theme of, wow, we expose way too much information. And like I said, that can be all the data sets on a system. And I was surprised that, for example, a jail's uptime is a host uptime, which it can be a very quick hint that, hey, you're not on a real host, even if you're trying to pretend you're one. And on and on. There are countless examples of that. And that even came up for ZFS delegation, where it's like, oh, this user can destroy a snapshot because they manage snapshots. By the way, the destroy can also apply to a data set, so they can do a great amount of damage. So this fine-grained control is always going to be a question, and at least the questions are coming up. Jan, would channel programs be best for the ZFS call tomorrow?
Maybe the implementation details, but the high-level effects of what can be done with them is probably on topic for this call.
That said, does anyone else have a topic before Jan gives a wicked quick description and update on his channel programs work for jail provisioning? Carlo, Igor, Dan, Dave. Okay, Jan, let her rip.
So what I want to do is at the basically mount point level, provision jails out of read-only clones and persistent data sets which belong to the jail, which are then mounted together so that I can keep the clones as basically stateless file systems, because I can easily recreate them from the origin, and that means I can use them for upgrading.
Yep.
And if I can get it fast enough, and everything looks like I can, this can be in the normal jail startup path, so that a hook will check if all of the data sets of this jail have the specified origins, and if not, destroy the read-only clones and replace them with fresh clones every time. And I'm pretty sure I can keep it down to below a second with just shell scripting, and a lot lower with a proper C helper in the end. And then you have a way to specify that this jail should have these mount points relative to its root directory. And then you just get those, and for each you can specify what should be its origin. And if you change the origin to, for example, a different snapshot, then restart the jail. The clones are compared against the new specification. destroyed and replaced by new clones. And that
Okay,
works
you've
within
described
a
that
few hundred
beautifully for
milliseconds.
months. How do channel programs jump in?
Oh, they allow me to quickly and efficiently inspect the current state of the jail dataset.
Okay.
But what I can't do from them is to basically modify that state in the way I would have to, because I can't take new clones. I can only create new snapshots. But I found a way to avoid that problem by having the channel program emit as output, so as return value, the steps which have to be executed to get into the desired state.
Oh,
So that
interesting.
basically the channel program returns a Lua table with one line per basically task, and the task is just basically shell function calls with the parameters separated by tabs, and then a shell script can read that in and call the functions.
Oh, so it kind of cries for help of what needs to happen to
Yeah,
get around
exactly.
the
It just emits
limitation.
basically
I like that. Okay.
it says something like this. Like a,
Maybe drop in chat if it's short.
yep,
Oh,
exactly.
danke.
It could look something like this. So ignore
Short.
the output format there. And the channel program says basically the parent for the jails exists in this case. If you copy and paste that in, someone who managed to stay with us so far can follow along. So it says that, okay, the basically parent ZFS file system for all jail exists, so nothing to be done here. Maybe log it. Jail create, and then the name of the jail and a UUID for the jail. The UUID for the jail is provided by the shell script. Next, it says, okay, and I haven't found these mount points, please create them. And if they exist, it will also check if what I'm currently stuck is that I want to have an empty snapshot for every data set, and potentially I can create a data set, but not yet snapshot it. So I have to be idempotent and recover from that state by basically making the file system read-only, checking if it contains any files, and if so, aborting, and otherwise creating the missing snapshot because I confirmed that the file system was read-only, and then I restore the writability of the file system.
Are you using return values from those shell scripts to determine success or failure as you're going through your requests for help
Yes,
from above?
but basically, not in the way I think you're implying.
Well, how do you do error handling if something goes wrong midway, regardless of the mechanism?
So if the channel program encounters an error and it's a fatal one which indicates a bug, basically some invariant is violated, then it will abort the channel program and you get an error message which is propagated upward as a failed exec hook. So it aborts the jail start. If it's just something which has to be fixed up and that's something you expect to encounter, then it may produce less output and basically say, yeah, okay, create this mount point, for example, and I can't inspect if it has an empty snapshot, but the creation function is expected to create that. So, yeah.
Do you then do a dance of like, if missing, do this, if this condition, do this, if this, clean up?
A bit of that. So
Okay.
basically that I always converge to if reasonable. Some errors I treat as fatal because there is no automated safe way to proceed because it's not clear what's the correct way to proceed. And it takes human intervention to understand how you ever got into this state. And yeah, for example, if the data set it finds for the jail contains child data sets with mount points pointing outside of the jail route, it will just say, sorry, you've messed up. So either you misconfigured something or someone tried to get you to be a confused deputy and detect something. But yeah, in this case, I can just report the error and I can't resolve it. But that's okay. It's not a problem.
Okay, so you're handling the 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are returns within Lua, and you can just call a shell
Uh,
program, but
yeah,
you happen to
basically,
have functions here.
exactly. The whole Lua script is provided by the shell script, so it is trusted. Um, Now we are getting really into the implementation detail, but at the end, I basically build up a shell argument list by splitting the lines, remove the single ticks at the end, split it on tabs, and execute it.
I see.
It's
So,
really execute code returned by the kernel.
well, a hello world example that doesn't use the functions would be probably super useful because I like that
Echo
approach as a
hello
workaround.
world
Echo hello world. Okay, so let me
would be
drop
the first
in.
line then.
I'll
But
do it in as a last line.
no, the relevant part is the let me. Oh, I didn't provide the command execution. Okay, so you would
Oh,
invoke it something like this. This is the invocation which you used.
okay,
You
cool,
specify the jail name,
cool.
the mount point for the parent data set, so slash jails in this case, the parent data set, and then one dash uppercase M for each mount point.
Okay. Thank you, whoever put in the articles on channel programs. That came up at the recent summit as given that there are like the 1 or 2 canonical examples, which it looks like you've given, and we're all kind of left with that. So I do hope that ecosystem will grow with time. Cool. I'll just put called with. Okay. Anything else at this time? Thank you very much. Do take a look at the hackathon doc that we went through last week. I know that was a bit verbose and rote, but hopefully we will get some results before the end of the year, given that we've been discussing so many amazing things. And of course, the 2 projects you've announced today are fantastic progress. We all have our goals and pet projects, and you name it. So, excuse me. Anything else at this time? And again, I hope to have the ZFS User and Developer Summit videos up this afternoon. They are being reviewed. And thank you for all being conscious of how to navigate a bunch of very smart people over a high latency link in a moderated context, because it's definitely a challenge. Well, who would like the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Thank you very much, Jan. Well, take care, everyone. Have a great remainder of the week.